So you may have heard about the Internet of Things, right? Well, Rockwell Automation, which is headquartered right here in Milwaukee, our own backyard, is a leader in the field. Sujeet Chan is here to talk more about it. So just a little bit of background about him. He is the Senior Vice President and Chief Technology Officer of Rockwell Automation. And there, he's responsible for leading technical innovation and global business development with a focus on making difference for customers by helping them to achieve greater productivity and sustainability. He serves on a number of government, industry, and higher education advisory boards, and currently holds, get this, 36 patents and has published more than 75 technical papers. That's a lot. And has received a number of distinguished honors for his engineering and technology leadership. Sujeet earned a Doctor of Philosophy degree in electrical engineering from the University of Florida. So please put together a warm post-lunch, but enjoyable, flying car welcome for Sujeet Chan.
Well, Tim, thank you very much for that kind introduction. When I got this slot, speaking slot, right after lunch, I figured, well, this is not the best time to give a talk. But then I thought, well, I could go right after Steve Wozniak, so this is so much better. So I'm really pleased with where I am right now. So kidding aside, what I wanted to talk about this afternoon is in the industrial sector, there is a great deal of excitement around the connected enterprise and Internet of Things. How many of you have heard of Internet of Things? Okay, that's most of you. So we will talk about how the Internet of Things is impacting the industrial sector and how it's affecting the connected enterprise. But before I dive into the Internet of Things and connected enterprise, I just wanted to spend a quick couple of minutes on introducing Rockwell Automation to you, because many of you may not know about Rockwell Automation. So let me give you a quick overview of Rockwell Automation. Last year, our sales in fiscal year 2013 were about $6.3 billion. Roughly half of these sales were outside of the US. And 2013 was a record year for us in terms of sales as well as operating earnings. We have about 22,000 employees globally. Roughly half are outside of the US. And we are a very diversified company. Over the years, we've spent a lot of effort in diversifying our business across multiple industrial sectors, and I'll talk a little bit about that. If you look at Rockwell Automation's culture, there are two things that really stand out. First is a very deeply embedded culture of innovation, and I'll talk about how that culture of innovation takes place at Rockwell. What do we do in terms of innovation? What drives us? How do we innovate? And the second thing is, if you Google the antonym, the opposite of Enron, you'll probably come up with Rockwell Automation. We are a very ethical, high integrity company, which is characteristic of any Midwestern, Milwaukee-based companies. So those are two things I wanted to highlight about Rockwell Automation's culture. So with that, let's talk about what does Rockwell Automation really do? So here's a list of some of the industry sectors that Rockwell Automation serves. And I bet you can identify at least 20 companies here that you're familiar with. Okay, now I'm done with telling you what Rockwell Automation does. Well, most of you still don't know what do we do. So let me use an example. I'm going to use an example that is outside of any of these customers that are listed on this slide. Less than 1% of our business is for amusement parks. So if you go to Six Flags and you ride one of the roller coaster rides, the electronics that propel that ride, that control the ride, the sensors that sense where the ride is, all the safety features that are built into that ride in case there's a power outage, in case there's some event that shuts the ride down, you want to make sure the ride comes to a safe stop, all the safety circuits, all the software are provided by Rockwell Automation. So that's what we do. We provide components for automation. We provide controllers, which is electronics primarily. We provide software. We provide services. So that's what makes up roughly $6.5 billion of our business. We sell 300,000 products. So if you look at our catalog, it's like a phone book. So that's a little bit about Rockwell Automation. Next time you go to Six Flags or Universal Studios or Disney and sit on any one of the rides, I hope you think of Rockwell Automation. Okay, So now, let's talk a little bit about innovation at Rockwell Automation. When we talk about innovation, which is deeply ingrained into our culture, we are a 111-year young company. 111 years. To survive for this long, it takes a lot of innovation. We've been through many technology discontinuities. We've been through many different competitors coming and going, but we survived. And to do that, it does take a very innovative culture. So we have a very simple definition of innovation, right? Innovation, to us, means leveraging technology trends to create new value for our customers. So innovation doesn't mean coming up with something new. Equally important to innovation is the value to the customers. So that's why we always try to balance technology trends such as cloud computing, Internet of Things, big data, analytics, some of the trends that are shown here, with some of the market trends. Where is the market going? And when you look at market trends, these are pretty exciting. According to McKinsey, the world population will be roughly 8 billion by 2020. What's more exciting about the 8 billion population is every year, 70 million people are transitioning into middle class. 70 million, from being in the poverty range to middle class. All of these people, many in emerging markets, want better food, better pharmaceuticals, cleaner water, better consumer goods. Well, guess what? That's in the sweet spot of what Rockwell Automation does, because that's what we help produce. So it's a very, very exciting time for us. And this convergence between technology and markets is creating what we call a connected enterprise. Okay, that's the subject of my talk, connected enterprise and Internet of Things. So let's talk about the connected enterprise. What is the connected enterprise? So I would say the last decade has been the decade of IT investment. A lot of companies invested very heavily in IT, including Rockwell Automation. We spent several $100 million rolling out SAP. You may not be familiar with SAP, but it's software, it's business software that automates business processes in the company. It's core part of IT. So we invested a great deal in IT. Today, I think we said 2013 was an inflection point for connected enterprise, because what a lot of companies have realized is to get value from the IT investment, you have to connect the data that resides in many different silos in your enterprise, bring it all together and optimize it, okay? So what does that mean, connect and optimize? And I'll give you some examples. We'll walk through some examples of how do you realize a connected enterprise, how do you connect all the data that's locked up in your manufacturing facilities, in your factories, with your supply chain, with the smart grid, for example, and how do you optimize the enterprise, okay? And we're going to talk about that. I'll give you some examples, but this is a very exciting vision. It's really enabled by a lot of the new technology trends that we're seeing. And we'll talk about some of the technology trends as well as we go through. So when I listen to Cisco talk about the Internet of Things, the Internet of Things means everything is connected to the internet, right? You have a lot of smart devices that connect over internet. Cisco believes Internet of Things will create $14 trillion of new value, okay, in the next 10 years. When I first saw this number, I thought they were talking about the national debt. But $14 trillion is a really big number. And roughly 27% of that is going to be in manufacturing, right? 27%, that's roughly $4 trillion of new value. And that's the space we live in. So where is this new value going to come from? And what will enable it? So we believe that with Internet of Things, the value is going to come from connecting and optimizing. And we'll talk about a lot of big data that lives in industrial facilities. For example, you've all seen oil rigs, right? Pumping oil. Each oil rig generates 1 terabyte of data every day. That's a lot of data. Okay, are we doing much with that data? No, We're not doing a whole lot with that data. So the question becomes, what do you do with that data? How do you optimize it? I want to talk a little bit about that. So what do we need to enable Internet of Things? I've listed 5 things here. The first one is not so easy to understand. We call it information-enabled multidiscipline control platforms. Okay, so what does that mean? Again, let's go back to our amusement park ride example. If every ride had a different controller that spoke different language, was implemented differently, to bring information together from these different controllers would be a nightmare, right? So Rockwell is the first company to build a standard, single, unified controller, which we call Logix, which is also information-enabled. What does information-enabled mean? What it means is this controller can connect over Ethernet, and it can talk to IT applications. When you design controllers for industrial automation, they're not designed for connecting to IT applications. In fact, until recently, IT and manufacturing were like oil and water. They never mixed. They never liked each other. But the technology trends are driving them closer and closer together. The connected enterprise is really bringing them together. So we talk about the common multidiscipline control platform. A secure network, a secure Ethernet network is also a key enabler for Internet of Things. You need smart assets. You need smart assets that can self-diagnose, that can self-report conditions, that can report, for example, how much energy they're consuming. So smart assets is another key enabler of Internet of Things. Finally, cloud computing, big data analytics, and mobility are other enablers of the Internet of Things. So we're going to talk a little bit about how do we connect and optimize to derive value from Internet of Things and the connected enterprise. So if you look at a typical factory, okay, this is an example of a factory that could be brewing beer. It could be a factory that's producing food, right? So this is a typical factory. Every machine generates a lot of information. This data that each machine generates, to get value from it, you need to contextualize it. You need to convert the data into information, okay? So a lot of people say, what does contextualizing data mean? Contextualizing data means you add the context to the data. For example, your car may be transmitting miles per gallon continuously into the cloud. That data by itself is not very useful unless you also transmit the speed of the vehicle, what type of traffic conditions you were in, right? When you combine that data with the context that the car is in, it makes a lot more meaning. So we call that information. So converting a lot of this data into information is a big deal. And that's the first step that's needed to take all this data that's coming out from industrial machines, industrial sensors, industrial systems. First step, convert it into information. Now when you start combining this information from different machines, you can start optimizing things. Wow, that's where there's a lot of value. So what can you do? Once you make your manufacturing system smarter, once you make your factories smarter, they're generating information now, right? Contextualized data. That information is coming out. If you can connect that information with supply chain information, okay, that'll give you tremendous value. We've done this at Rockwell Automation. We've built the connected enterprise at Rockwell Automation. And we've got some real numbers to share with you. We were able to reduce our inventory by 32% because we can look at our distributors' inventories. We can see how much the inventory levels are and produce what is needed, right? So if the inventory is low for a certain product, we produce that product more. So knowing where the demand is allows us to produce to demand. So we can optimize our inventory. Our productivity went up 4%. These are some very, very significant benefits from enabling the connected enterprise. So it's not just connecting what's inside the factory, but taking that data and connecting it across the connected enterprise is where there's real value. So here's another example. We have a customer that runs oil rigs in Alaska. There's not a lot of IT expertise there. So we remotely monitor all the equipment at the oil rigs in Cleveland, Ohio. Now, we've been doing remote monitoring for, I don't know, 20 plus years. What's different about this? What's different about IoT? In this case, data from pumps, from compressors that are running the oil rigs, goes into the cloud. In this case, we partnered with Cisco and Microsoft to move a lot of this data into the cloud. Okay, so what? Big deal. The advantage of getting the data into the cloud is now you could do crowdsourcing, right? You can have a professor at UWM look at that data and do some prognostics. Hey, I have a great model of a compressor. I'm going to apply that model to this data, and I can predict when this compressor is going to fail. You can't do that with what we had before. You can enable mobility. I can look at the diagnostics, I can look at information, I can push it to mobile devices. Couldn't do that before. So these are some of the changes that Internet of Things, cloud computing is driving for us. Cloud gives us scalable computing. You can run really complex simulations if you like, or you don't have to run complex simulations. So in this case, our customer Hillcorp, the first 3 days of remote monitoring, our office in Cleveland discovered that one of their compressors was going to fail. They immediately called up the person in Alaska and told them exactly what to do. So our customer there said, gee, it took me 15 minutes to fix that problem. Had I not had this remote monitoring, it would have taken him 6 hours. He would have to break out the manuals, figure out what's going on. He would have shutdown and so forth. So this is the kind of value you can derive from connecting and optimizing using Internet of Things and the connected enterprise. Let me give you another example. This is an example of a cement company. When you look at cement production, 25% of producing cement, cost of producing cement, is in electrical energy. If you look at the United States, roughly half of all electrical energy consumed is in industrial operations. If I can save 10% of that energy, that's roughly $6 billion a year of savings. Pretty significant, right? So what we did in this case is, in the cement plant, we instrumented the plant to know exactly where the energy was being consumed. So for example, to produce cement, you have to crush sandstone. So crushing the stone takes a lot of energy. After you crush the stone, after you do a lot of the mixing, you transport the stone to a furnace where you're doing curing for the cement. That takes a lot of energy. Now, what we built is a system that constantly is communicating with the smart grid. The grid is telling our system the cost of energy. We're predicting the cost of energy. So now we can schedule operations like crushing the sandstone or the furnace operations in the middle of the night when the cost of energy is lower. So when you're not crushing limestone or curing cement, you could be packaging, you could be moving the crushed cement, so you build buffers. So we completely redid the facility to optimize energy. Big deal, right? So in the past, we were not able to connect to the smart grid. We were not able to connect to the supply chain. Now we can do that. Now the cement company can look at the demand, can manage its supply chain, can manage its energy, big savings. So here's an example of what connected enterprise, Internet of Things can do by connecting things and optimizing. So all of this sounds great, but we are just starting out with the Internet of Things and connected enterprise. We're just kind of taking a baby step in that direction. There's still a lot of innovation that needs to be done. And we at Rockwell Automation need help. We can't solve all these problems. When I go and talk to customers and I talk to them about Internet of Things, the two things that they bring up instantly is security and data privacy. Okay? So they ask, is this going to be secure? Well, we think Microsoft will solve that problem. Well, they don't believe that. The second question they ask is, what about data privacy? You're going to take all this data out of my oil rig or my factory. Who owns that data? I really think I own it. Should I give it to you? If I give it to you, what are you going to do with the data? Will it cause me damage at some point in the future, right? Data privacy, big issue. So we need to really solve these two problems convincingly for Internet of Things to be applied in a big way. So we're just kind of starting out with Internet of Things. The third area where we need help is interoperability. If you look at all the machines that we have, industrial automation is a little bit different. We build our products to work for 25 years, not like an iPhone. We build them, we design them to operate for 25 years. That's a long time. There are products that have been running for like 75 years. They are, in fact, right here in Milwaukee at the utility company, there's a motor starter that dates back, I think that's the oldest one we found, like 70 plus years. Still working, no need to replace it. So our products are designed to run 25 years, which means if you walk into a factory, like an automotive factory or a food factory, you're going to see a lot of legacy, a lot of old stuff. This old stuff talks different languages, right? When I was programming many, many years ago, I programmed in a language called Pascal. I talked to my son, and he says, what's Pascal, Dad? Never heard of it. So a lot of these controllers that are still out there are using older data formats. They're using different communication systems. They are pretty much still running. Some of them may be running on DOS. So interoperability is a big deal, especially in our world. We need standards. We need easier ways for all of this different equipment that's out there to interoperate and work with each other. So that's, again, where we need some help. Data semantics. We generate, like I said, a lot of data. How do you make sense of this data? You're getting a huge amount of data. How do you create a semantic web? How do you create the semantics for the data? Okay. How do you create ontologies? I know I'm using a term that most of you may not be familiar with, but we need a way to interpret the enormous amounts of data that's being generated. And this is going to be a big problem with Internet of Things because we're going to generate tremendous amounts of data. Finally, analytics, right? Today they say the biggest shortage is for data scientists. Well, I want to add something to that. You know, data scientists, there are data scientists who can do empirical analysis. If I give them data, they could do analytics on the data, they can give me plots and stuff. But to interpret that data, you need people who have what we call domain knowledge. So domain knowledge is the understanding of the process, understanding of how an oil rig works, understanding how the oil that's getting pumped out by the compressor can cause issues with the compressor or the pump. That domain knowledge needs to be combined with data analytics to make sense of the information. So the way we see this evolving is data, no problem. We got plenty of it. We need to convert it to information. And to do that, we need to contextualize it. Yes, we can do that. Once you contextualize the data and convert it into information, you can then generate knowledge from that. And how do you generate knowledge? When you connect data from multiple points. For example, pump. I contextualize the data. I tell you the operating conditions of the pump. That's information. You get it in the cloud. You analyze the data. You can predict now that the pump's going to fail. That's knowledge. I can now say, in 2 hours, your pump's going to fail. That's knowledge. Now, there's another step. You could take that knowledge and convert it into wisdom. Okay, so what does wisdom mean? Wisdom means taking that knowledge and applying it to redesign your pump. Now you know why it's failing. Now you know what's happening with the pump. You can go in and use that knowledge to redesign the pump. So we see this transformation happening from data to information, information to knowledge, and knowledge to wisdom. Okay? That's the journey we are on. And we are still very early. There's still a lot of challenges, as you can see, great deal of innovation that needs to go in here. And I look to partnerships with a lot of you for solving some of these tough problems as we move into the future. So let me end with this slide. As we said, I started out with talking about innovation, defining what innovation means. It's really all about creating customer value, new customer value, leveraging technology trends. In the industrial sector, the advantages of driving innovation with the Internet of Things and connected enterprise, what will it provide? The connected enterprise and Internet of Things will provide value in 4 areas. We believe it'll provide unprecedented productivity, and make companies more globally competitive by giving them faster time to market. Faster time to market through connecting their design process with their production process. It reduces the total cost of ownership by reducing energy, for example. It improves asset utilization, like in the oil rig example, where your assets don't fail as much. And overall, you can manage your enterprise risk better by connecting your supply networks, by connecting the rest of your enterprise with your production. So that's all I had for you today. I really appreciate this opportunity to speak with you this afternoon. I hope you can sense the excitement and the potential of how Internet of Things and connected enterprise can really transform the way we run industrial enterprises in the future. And I, again, want to thank you very much for your attention and appreciate this opportunity to speak today. Thank you.